Las Vegas, owned by Amazon. And at Zappos, we're focused on great customer service, but we don't just think of the customer as the person who's ordering shoes and clothing from us. We think of our customer as our vendors, our partners, pretty much our employees, anyone we work with. And we actually make it a point to respond to every single point of customer feedback. So any employee suggestion, any customer feedback, we actually read and respond to all of it. And most larger companies, they aren't starving, so they're not suffering from a lack of opportunities. Rather, they're suffering from indigestion. It's actually hard to process those opportunities within the company. And they're not properly vetted and routed. So we actually operate under a system called holacracy. And holacracy is a really interesting type of self-organizational system where you don't have bosses or managers, and every single employee is empowered to work across functions on the priorities that they're most excited to work on. Sounds a little chaotic, and the media has covered the good and the bad of holacracy. But one of the lesser known reasons of why we decided to go onto holacracy was actually to help manage our inboxes. So we were running into this issue where I would send an email to someone, and then I would add on about 10 different people on CC because I figured that someone might need to be involved or might need to know something. And you'd end up with these email chains that would just go on forever, and you'd try and remove yourself from them, but you couldn't. And so that's just something, I'm sure you guys have all had that at your companies as well. And so one great example of a system that we use within holacracy is called the tactical meeting. So in a tactical meeting, you have a group of about 10 people coming together, and they all have overlapping work. And so on the fly, you can actually build an agenda. So you just list out all the items that you wanted to talk about. And you actually just quickly go through those agenda items. So you have a facilitator who goes through and says, Maggie, what's your agenda item? Here you go. And I might have a question that I want to talk to one person about, or maybe I need a couple other people in the room. But you go through these really, really quickly. So in a 1 hour tactical meeting, you can actually go through maybe 30 different items, and it saves you all that different email traffic. We then augment this with systems like Jira, Slack, Trello, Zendesk, Asana, all sorts of things. And we also have an internal system called GlassFrog. And what's great about GlassFrog is that in a larger company, again, it helps you route these requests. So I might get an inbound request from someone who wants to know about charity donation opportunities. And I can go onto GlassFrog and literally Google the word charity. And I can actually see who in the company is responsible for our CSR. And I can then route the request specifically to them. And finally, we train all of our employees on individual productivity systems like getting things done, or you might know of a couple other systems. And that ensures that if I send something to someone else, they actually read and respond to it. So on the individual side, I'm on the chief of staff team to our CEO, Tony Hsieh, and I wanted to talk about how to scale accessibility for an individual. So unlike almost any other CEO who I'm aware of, Tony actually gives his personal email address out to everybody he meets. That's people on the street, that's the end of his talks. It's tony@zappos.com, and he actually reads and responds to that. I think it's pretty dramatically interesting that he does that. And what we found is that, not a lot of people actually email him. So I give this email address out here today, and probably only 10% of you will email him. Mine is mhsu@zappos.com, same thing. But he actually has a pretty good productivity system that he calls Yesterbox. And you can find out a lot about Yesterbox online. But what it is that you respond to, oh, great. Thanks. Can you hear me? This one's, oh, don't touch it. Okay, I won't touch it. Now? Hello? Perfect. So he has a system called Yesterbox. And what it is you respond to yesterday's emails today. So it actually serves two functions. One function is that you respond to every single email within a set time period, so 24 to 36 hours. And the second thing is you're actually training people not to respond, that you won't respond to them immediately. So what you do on Yesterbox is at the beginning of every day, you set aside a set number of hours, let's say it's about 2 hours, and you then basically go through your emails quickly, identify the ones that will take longer than 10 minutes to respond to those first, and then you quickly triage all the remaining emails. So at the end of that period, you have what's great is really, you have a sense of completion, and you're not constantly trying to deal with all these new emails that are coming in, which is pretty cool. I mean, it does take a lot of discipline, and if there is an email that comes in that day that's urgent, you can obviously respond to that. But what it is just a very great system of taking your emails and translating that into a calendar item that you have to do. Tony also has a chief of staff team, and we act as a bit of an air traffic control to help route these emails. We also help test out different productivity tools. So I just want to talk about two today. One is publicly available priorities. So Tony actually has a public Evernote, which you can find online, and it lists his public priorities. So when someone emails him about any topic that's not related to that, he literally just writes back to them and says, this is not one of the 15 things I'm interested in talking about, so I don't want to talk to you. And those things include dealing with self-organization, so helping with our transition to self-organization. They include things like helping update our compensation process. Priority 11 is around getting in a set number of steps every week, so he wants to get 70,000 steps every week. So we've actually had people who have emailed and proposed walking meetings, and we actually have a lot of people who strong-arm the requests and try and get them into, I guess it's not working anymore, but who try and get them into his system. Priority 13 is getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. Luckily, we have yet to receive any sleep session requests, but I'm sure those will be coming. And then the last thing is to actually put work back onto the person. So we've actually thought about something like a scavenger hunt, which would be a way, thank you, second mic, a way of completing, so if you have to basically complete several tasks in order to gain access to a person. And again, we find that only about 10% of the people actually do this. So even if we have one very simple thing, and that could be something as simple as read an article and get back to us with your thoughts, only about 10% of the people actually do this. So we thought that's a pretty interesting way of putting work back onto the requester, or saying, hey, I'm really glad that you're interested in what we're doing. Here's a couple things to follow up on. And again, I mean, to me, it's pretty shocking, but not a lot of people actually take the time to take that next step. So that's just a quick overview of what we do at Zappos, what I do, and looking forward to talking more about that later today. Thanks so much.
Hi guys. Just want to level set. Will you get slapped up? There you go. Perfect. Hi, I'm Oji Udezue. I lead the product team for Atlassian Communications. Does anyone out here know? Thank you. All right, I think I can figure this out. Does anyone here use Atlassian products? You want to raise your hand real quick? Jira, Confluence? Okay, so that's Atlassian. Atlassian is a company that focuses on teamwork. Like, we wake up every day trying to make teams more productive, more connected, giving alley-oops to each other so you can accomplish the goal. So what I want to talk a little bit about today is a little bit like what I guess the founder of this inbox also talked about, which is the problems we all face. We think communication and the inundation that we see today is communication is a very old problem, and we have tools like email to manage them. But I think we have to get more creative than just thinking about it as email, and think hard about like what are the real problems we want to solve. And then maybe we'll come to good solutions. So we hear this from all our customers all the time, that finding time to work is harder and harder. It's because the inbox is terrible, but also because there are many inboxes today, right? If you go to Dropbox, there's a little place where it sort of organizes all the documents you've been working on. You go to Salesforce, or all your tools, even ours, send you a bunch of notifications all the time about, something updated on Confluence and so on and so forth. So you essentially have a chaotic inbox, but also multiple inboxes appearing in many SaaS tools, which makes life pretty difficult. So knowledge workers spend all day communicating and talking, and sometimes they have to go home to actually work on stuff. There are two big main points we think are super important to pull out of all that mess, though. And that's like, it's crazy right now. Like, I talked a little bit about that, there's so much inundation. Every new valuable SaaS tool you like adds to the problem. It solves one thing, and then it adds something else to it. And, it's crazy. The second one is inhuman communication at work. So in reality, we all just want to connect. We all know the value of face-to-face, of walking up to someone, creating a rapport, but it takes so much energy. We find that even setting up a meeting seems like a ritual, right? You have to find the right time, you have to book a room, and then people just give up. Right? It's much easier to send a reply all email or to do an at all in a team communication tool. So being human at work is getting increasingly harder because we built all these tools that help people communicate with very low energy but also with no consequence whatsoever. Because in reality, it's not about spending more time. Right? There's a crisis. It's not about spending 10 hours at work trying to communicate or find time to work, trying to find time to focus. It's not about not connecting with your teammates, whether they're here or around the world. It's being effective. At Atlassian, we think about it this way. We really don't want you to spend all your time communicating. We don't judge ourselves or our tool by how many hours you have to spend in it. If you look at, I don't mean pejorative, but there are tools out there in work and personal life where the company judges itself by, people are spending 10 hours in our tool. We're not interested in that. We're interested in you being a hero at work, being contextual to what you need to do to get work done, and then moving on to being a hero because you have your own personal life. If you go to Econ 101, right, and sort of take that lens on life, you'll find that really human beings have two opposing things. They need to earn enough to spend time on leisure. And we sort of think about that really hard, which is be effective, then go home, have time for your life. So our vision of this, my vision of this, is the ability to do really effective work with your team and step away confidently, so that when you get back, we really want to present you with all the things you need to catch up, to focus on the next best thing, right? To figure out what your team's view is. Now, we also want to do that for everyone else on your team, right? Come back, think about it just visually. Come back to work in the morning. You're not inundated by 1,000 different things. You can see the most important things for you to do next, the things for you to focus on next for work. Now, this sounds like telepathy, but I'm here to tell you that I'll probably be one of the first to invent functional telepathy, but this is our vision for work, for sure. So, just closing this out a little bit, because I talked about problems, I'll sort of tell you what we're trying to do about this, and then during the panel itself, we'll talk a little bit more about strategies and all the different things that we employ for this. So, in September, we launched Atlassian Stride. A little bit of history. Atlassian bought a cool tool called HitChat. We sort of launched the team messaging revolution, which was joined by Slack as well. Slack has been, I guess, more successful than HitChat was. But that success and our belief in the category made us step back and think hard about what are the old problems to solve here. We're not just trying to beat email, we're trying to do better, right? So with Atlassian Stride, I'll tell you about a couple of things that we did differently in the communications medium that I think will help make a dent in people being inundated. The first one is actions and decisions. So what we built is, instead of having a river of messages, instead of having like this ephemeral chat you have at work where everything scrolls away, we allow people to annotate any text as, hey, this is an action, this is a decision. We call this a teamwork fabric. What that means is that visually, as you look at your communication stream, we start breaking it up. You know, human beings generally have this stuff in speech and in communication themselves. You have jokes, you have sarcasm, you have all these semantic meanings. But in chat, it's all a lot of text and a bunch of emoji, right? It's just not enough. With actions and decisions, we're building what we call a teamwork platform so that you can begin to add semantic meaning into conversation. For us, it looks like this, which is you have conversations, you set some things as actions, And on the side, we sort of aggregate the most important things, which are the actions and decisions, so you can you can sort of go focus on the most important things first. Eventually, we'll add things like, it's a question, or it's a poll, right? And that way, conversation is broken up and you can focus on just the right things. The other thing we added, right, and these are just two examples, is focus mode, right? It was very important to us to give people access to what we call JOMO, the joy of missing out, right? You can step away, focus on some things, and be confident and trust that we'll just carry you there when you come back. So with focus mode, think about it as sort of more carefully treated, do not disturb, right? We take all your notifications away, we give you a specific space, but not only that, we tell people what you're working on. So people don't mistrust the fact that people don't think you're going to go through cocktails or you're playing base softball in the afternoon. We tell them what you're working on, and then we allow you and give you the space to focus. Now, one of the things we've added to focus mode, and we're building out right now, is the catch-up view. We knew that people were never go into focus mode if we didn't gently bring them back. If we didn't say, here are the top 10 things you missed, here is the stuff you need to focus on next. So those are the two things that we're adding to Atlassian Stride to make it better, to make it a superset of just team messaging. So I'm going to end here and continue with the panel. But our whole mantra is get to done. Get to done with your team. Don't do more work than you need. Just be a hero with the things you need and get back home to your personal life. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jerry Talton. I work in the search learning and intelligence team at Slack, managing a group that works on predictive intelligence. I both didn't prepare anything, and I also don't have any tools or tips for productivity to share with all of you. But I can tell you a little bit about the things that we're doing at Slack right now to try to fulfill the original mission of Slack, which is to make people's working lives simpler, more pleasant, and more productive. Just for my own edification, how many people use Slack? So like a lot of you. How good do we feel about those three missions? So on the more productive access, how many of you think Slack makes you more productive? Wow, really nobody? That's not a good sign. Come on, that's not fair. The point that I was trying to make is that I think on the, I'm just gonna go boldly right ahead no matter what anyone says. The point that I was trying to make is that I think tools like Slack have done a good job giving people access to more information. We need to do our work. If you think about living in an email world, you have maybe 1 or 2% of all the data that you need to kind of interact with your job in a given way. And with a tool like Slack or Stride, what we have is access to an order of magnitude more of that information. It's relevant to you getting the job done. The problem is that commensurate with that sort of increase in the amount of communication, it's much harder to navigate it. Through this great study from McKinsey we like to cite that says that knowledge workers spend about 28% of their day just looking for stuff so that they can go do their job. That's like a sort of stunning statistic in terms of waste. What we're trying to do on the SLI team at Slack is to give you the ability to focus on what's most important for you at any given point in time by really understanding how you work, how you communicate, what you care about, and where your attention should go. So put all of that sort of under the auspices of combating information overload, which is maybe the problem with like Slack contributes to is it's helping you be more productive. And I love this panel because I get to sort of make this point. If you're very important at a company, eventually what happens to you is you get given a chief of staff, maybe not as good as Maggie, but hopefully some reasonable facsimile. And what that chief of staff tries to do for you is to leverage your time. And internally at Slack, we think about this kind of across 3 different axes. A really good chief of staff, number one, you wake up in the morning and they can tell you everything that you're going to do that day, where your attention needs to go, what meetings you're going to sit on, where your brain needs to be. If you're in a meeting and something catches on fire, that person will come and knock on the door and say, hey, stop thinking about this, go work on that instead. And lastly, if you have a question about something, if if you want to say, what's the price of oranges in Uzbekistan, you can turn to your chief of staff and ask them, and they will know that answer because they have all of this information at their fingertips that they need to do. That's what Slack is trying to do for every single person in the company. And the way that we do that, just to be very brief, is we have this enormous treasure trove of information about the way that we work. We know the people that we talk to, we know the kinds of content that we engage with, we know the channels that you're in, we know what times in the product you're most productive, what times we need to step away, and we can take all of that information and use all of this amazing work that's been done in the last 10 or 15 years of machine learning, not to sell you ads, which is stunning, but instead to just turn around and try to help you focus your attention and put it in the right place and make it more productive. So that is hopefully sort of the vision for Slack 2.0, is to give everybody in the organization a personal chief of staff kind of feel, just from the way it naturally works. And I'll give you one tiny example of this real quick, and then I'll shut up, which is a product that SLI launched this past summer, which is People Search. If you're at a big company with, let's say, 10,000 people, and you have a problem about, I don't know, let's say a JavaScript error, finding the right person to go to ask about that particular problem you're having in a 10,000 person organization isn't difficult, it's impossible. You'll play a game of telephone, you'll ask your boss if they know somebody with a JavaScript error, they'll send you to Fred in another department, and you'll kind of follow these little information foraging trails until you find someone who maybe knows something about your question. What we did in Slack was we just took all the messages that you write and used it to build a very simple statistical model of the things that you know a lot about, the things that you're an expert in. And now when you type a search query into the Slack search bar, if we find a person who knows about that topic, we will return that person to you as a first-class search result. And that's something that didn't require you to do any work, it didn't require the person to do any work other than just go about their job. But once you have that ability, it can really help you cut out a lot of this 28% of your time searching for information, just putting you in exactly where it needs to go. So with that, let's turn it back over.
Cool, great, sure. Thank you so much. Let me invite all of our panelists back up here. Monograph mic. We survived the technical glitches. Technology is wonderful when it works, is what I would say, and then it's not. So let's, technology gods, by mentioning something, there we go. So I want to jump right in. We've got about 15 minutes or so for some Q&A, and it strikes me, we were having a conversation before we came out here, and one of the things that the two of you were raising, and Jerry, I wonder your thoughts on this too. A lot of us talk about our inbox, our email, but I think the two of you were making the comment that our inbox, the definition of this panel is about your feed, right? It's sort of everything coming at us all the time, not just our email. So I'm wondering, perhaps if Maggie, if you want to start, how would you define your feed, and is managing of all of these different feeds becoming a full-time job, and we're focusing on how to do that, and not on the work that we're doing, and how do you balance those two?
Sure, I'll start. I know Oji has a lot of things to say about this. I think for me, I mean, we all have multiple inboxes, text message, phone, all sorts of things, and I guess I've been a bit clear to other people about fitting into my productivity system, and so I think originally, if someone texts me, I feel compelled to text them back. Now if someone texts me and it's something work related, I say, that's great, send me an email so I can put this into my productivity system the way it has to be done. And most people respect that. So, we get a lot of LinkedIn requests, for example, and I'll say, that's great, send me an email, and then I can triage the way I need to.
And Oji, would you say the same thing?
I love how you are making the world conform to you. I love it. I love it a lot.
Yeah, I guess.
So I'll try to be brief. I have maybe like 4 or 5 emails and 1 work email, so multiple inboxes. I use Stride at work, and the whole of the company uses that. We actually just use email for external communications mostly. Nicely with actions and decisions, I can sort of capture my workflow inside Stride today. I couldn't months ago before we built that stuff. But when I think about the mega feed future we're talking about, it's also your phone telling you stuff all the time, because we've built this mega feed notifications into mobile thing. It's your self-driving car telling you all kinds of things, right, about your environment or where you're going. It's, we're just heading into a place where today it's easy to manage information at work. I think maybe if you're a CEO, it's hard. But for the average person, it's sort of, it's an impending doom. I think in 5 years, it'll be a thing that everyone has to manage. It'll be an actual problem. It'll be an opportunity for more startups to work on. It'll be an opportunity for my team to do more for people out there. But I think we're on the cusp of inundation digitally, and it's right there.
And Jared, for you, a question on Slack. I wonder how much of these tools that are being created by companies like Atlassian and Slack. So as people think of those as helping to manage their life, and then they need to think about how to manage those tools effectively too. How do you get better at something like Slack? How do you use it to your advantage so that it feels like it's actually enabling you to become more efficient and not another thing that you have to sort of figure out?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I'm just curious in the room, how many of you try to do inbox zero for anything? Like Slack, email? This is really interesting to me. I'll take a polemic opinion. You're all alluding to something. And our VP of technology at Slack, Michael Locke, he does Slack zero, actually. By the end of the day, he tries to burn all the way down so that he has no unread channels. And one of the points that we continually try to make is like, that's a myth, right? Like, there's no notion of Twitter zero, right? It's not something that you would think about trying to do. And similarly within a company, unless you're really in every single channel and reading everything, you just have some filtered window that you kind of take in to look at stuff, and then you're making yourself feel good by the fact that you've got that little counter to go to zero. I think one of the things that we have sort of from a product perspective a responsibility to do is to get people to understand that it's okay to leave some things unread and to not look at it. We have to help them focus their attention in the right places. You really have to flip that bit. There's too much information out there. You can't consume all of it. There's no, you don't win anything for driving down that unread
There's no
to
prize.
zero. Yeah, exactly.
I wonder too, that's a really interesting point because I struggle personally with, as I say, my inbox is not awesome right now, but I will start every day thinking, I wonder if I can get it close to zero. I wonder if and so it becomes this thing that in my brain is planted as I wake up and start looking at my inbox or feed if I can find it. So a separate from that struggle, I wonder, as people are thinking about what the effectiveness of all of these tools do and becoming better at managing those, I wonder if there's a fear of becoming almost too good in these distributed tools that remove us from face-to-face interactions or getting up from our desk. If everything's done really well in this kind of productivity way, is there any danger that we're not forcing ourselves to just go talk to the person next to us, in our office or something? How do we balance those two things? Because I think it's still so important to have that kind of interaction.
There's so much I can say about this. It's almost like the thing that is interesting about our industry, computer science, I'm just going to say computer science, is that okay, guys? Is, I think it's almost ethical, it's like our goals, right? We could totally say that the goal of communication is to make people more human, to make people connect. But until we actually say that, it could not be. I have this theory that the reason messaging is so pervasive is that is the least amount of energy required to communicate. Everything above that is more energy. It's talking to you, getting to a meeting, and so on and so forth. And so you sort of devolve to zero. And sure, you can, with Slack and us, we can help you manage that evolution in terms of priority issue and what's interesting. But we really need to ask ourselves if our goal is to keep making people more human. And I think we can do that as well if we focus on it. As an example, a long time ago, 3 years ago, Atlassian bought Jitsi, which is a sort of the biggest open source video platform out there, which sort of powers our meetings features. And we've started being more thoughtful about bringing that deeper into team messaging so that it's an actual option and super low friction to talk to someone with a face. And we're excited about that because I think that's our goal.
For us, we think a lot about long-term relationship building, and you can't do that with an inbox. It's very tactical to change these messages, and so we think about getting into a 2-year or 4-year relationship, and that involves having those unstructured conversations that actually might lend themselves well to Slack or something of the sort, but don't necessarily lend themselves well to these one-offs, like I need something from you and I need something from you. And so we don't think there will ever be a replacement for this face-to-face. We're actually experimenting a lot with VR and AR, and how can we make shopping social and those sorts of how can you get to that personal connectivity and at the same time feel like there's some way of surfacing what's important and time sensitive in your feed. And so I'm really excited to hear about what you're both working on, because that's my fear. If I don't get to inbox 0, that I miss something that was either important or time sensitive. And if I knew that my system could surface that for me, I think it would make me feel a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. Jerry, you mentioned a lot of data sets that you have at Slack. We'll get through this. That you see these data sets, you sort of see people's behavior, and I wonder how much you can sort of see into people if they're different when they're performing in an environment like this versus live. It's hard to measure how people would be off the platform, obviously, but I wonder, it seems like people have to have a persona when they're behind a message. I misinterpret people's cues, workplace cues. I'm not sure if they're serious right now or sort of joking. All those things that are very hard to read from people's digital communications, and I wonder how you try to figure some of that out in addition to this.
Well, this is one of the things that we're sort of most actively working on in Slack right now under the auspices of this new project called Organizational Insights, which is to try to take the fact that we have all of this data that we can analyze and understand and turn it around and actually deliver back to you and to your boss and the other people in the organization how you communicate and how effective teams communicate and what are the hallmarks of good communication. So you can kind of imagine how nice would it be to sit down with Slack at the end of the week and get a reminder that says, hey, last week you sent 47 messages. This message was the most influential one that you sent, and it influenced these 6 people in these ways. On top of that, one of your direct reports, he's like cursing a lot recently. Maybe you should talk to him about that in your next one-on-one. Also, you've got this new project that you're working on. Project Rutabaga, and we've noticed that sentiment of Project Rutabaga is trending up amongst the marketing department, but it's trending down amongst your engineering team. We should talk about that. And by the way, just one more thing. We noticed that in your communications with women, you use these words. You never use those words when you talk to men. If we could give you all of that insight into the way that you talk, the hope is that it's like a superpower for you to think about how to communicate more effectively and kind of be a more authentic and better version of yourself.
So we're a little sensitive to time, and we're sort of behind, but I want to give each of you an opportunity to close this out with sort of a final thought, some advice maybe for people in the room here, whatever sort of wisdom you'd like to share with the crowd. I give you one.
I think the quick piece of advice technology is out to get us, as far as I know. I think it's, understanding, at the end of the day, it's about people, and so understanding how other people are approaching their feeds and their inboxes, and understanding how you do it, and kind of learning and matching those styles. And I don't know if that's advice, but basically just more empathy for others is kind of what I'd like to share.
We think about things as a pyramid. We think about communications, which is just, it's mundane, right? And then we think about enrichment, right? How do you short circuit the fact that you get a link and you spend 30 minutes researching that link before you send the next message? How can we compress that? So we call that enrichment. And then we think about personalization. What does it mean for me? Is there something about that link that matters to me? And how do I even much more tailor that into something that's useful and meaningful for my team? So we think about it as a pyramid. I think a lot of us are at the communication level. We're forced to be manual. We're forced to manage all this stuff. We're forced to do it in our heads. And we'd like to see a world where we climb up the pyramid into enrichment and personalization. At Atlassian, we also have these AI strategies, right, of summarization and sentiment. What we really want to do is to take advantage of the people. Like when we break up things into actions and decisions, for example, we want you to contribute your knowledge of what's important so that our algorithms get better and we don't have to guess. And maybe we don't prioritize cat videos over things that actually matter. So that's our focus. I'd say, if there's one word I'd say, everyone here is a professional. Filter, filter, filter. If you can manually, or find tools that do, because in the end, it's not everything that you care about, it's just a few of those things, and they have to be the most important things.
And I guess just for me, the thing that I'm most excited about as we, are constantly thinking about all this crazy, scary technology that's bringing about the downfall of American democracy, amongst other things. I certainly not Slack. We're not doing that. But I think the thing that's really special is that these tools really are serving to make the smaller place and bring people closer together. I work in New York, and most of Slack is in San Francisco, and I have a really good friend now who sits in San Francisco that I hardly ever see that we share a remote meeting, and because Slack is such a good tool for just shooting the shit and communicating, we were able to develop a friendship sort of in 30-minute meetings every other week. That's really exciting, this notion that these tools that are kind of moving into the workplace are making communication less sterile and more authentic and easier. I think that's a really cool world in which we're all going to get to live.
I think it's an optimistic way to end the... What's that? All right, well, look, I want to thank our panelists here. We could all use another meditation, maybe, to sort of power through some of our technical difficulties. But how about a round of applause for our panelists for getting through that? That's not easy. Thank you. So thank you all for this session, and I will hand it off to the next folks here. Thank you all very much.